Welcome to selfdiscoverywisdom.com, formerly known as Self-Discovery Media. On these podcasts, you're going to hear people who speak from the heart. They've taken the journey in life. Many things have happened to them, but they've changed it to happening for them. And in their strength, their courage, they've discovered their abilities and their wisdom, and they are now sharing it here with you. Do enjoy each show. We bring it to you with love and knowing that it's going to help you on your journey of life. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Your Health is Your Choice, right here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my wonderful repeat guest is Michaela Gaffen. We go by Mickey, and Mickey was a wonderful contributor to our Forgotten Children book series, which we were delighted to have her, which I invite everybody to go read, which we will be talking about. But today we're talking about her new book, The Immunity Code. The Immunity Code, Fuel Your Body's Defense with food and lifestyle. So we can be our own healing opponent, folks. We don't have to be sick. She says in today's fast world, maintaining strong health has never been more critical. With increasing stress, environmental toxins, processed food, many people find their immune systems compromised without realizing it. So the Immunity Code is here to change that narrative. Written by seasoned nutrition coach, board certified behavior analyst, Mickey Gaffen, this comprehensive guide offers readers practical, science-backed strategies to strengthen their immune defenses through nutrition and smart lifestyle choices. With her expertise, extensive experience in helping individuals transform their health, it brings together her knowledge of behavior change, holistic wellness, global nutrition practices to offer insight, actionable resources for anyone looking to improve their health immunity. And so it's an easy platform to follow. We're going to be talking all about that book. And you know, your health is your choice. When we are sick, what are we going to do about it? Instead of running off to the doctor, we're here in BC, Canada, we can't get one anyway, is what can we do to boost our immune system so that we don't fall prey to the next thing going around? Welcome back, Mickey. Great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me back. I'm excited to be here.
So another new book, which is wonderful. And yes, immunity. If we're not strong in our immunity, whatever's going around, the next variant, the next flu, the next this or that, and every time we get something, it breaks our immunity down even further. And then we're more susceptible to the next thing. So keeping our immunity strong is really, really important, isn't it?
It is, and also getting your immunity strong, because I think these days we don't generally have a very strong immune system.
No.
It's common to hear people say, well, my child came home with a sniffle and now I'm sick. And, this is happening for the whole season now. We're in fall, heading to winter. We already have snow, so, it feels like winter to me. But people tend to expect that they're going to spend this season sick. This was not always the case.
Yeah.
This is not something that it has to be. And, centuries ago, when I became a nurse, we would have a particular question to ask incoming patients, which was, are you on any medication? And typically you'd get no, or, oh, well, I have this little yellow pill for me water, that kind of thing from an older person. But typically speaking, we didn't expect people to say yes. Now, when you go to your doctor, assuming you can get to one, the question is, what medication are you on? The pre-frame has shifted tremendously from are you on anything to what is it you're on? The anticipation is that you're on stuff. So when you take medication, whatever you're taking it for, there are side effects. There are things that you're not taking it for that you're going to get anyway. And that all starts to compromise your immune system. Then when you look at the raging vaccine situation, and I don't just mean the pandemic vaccine, I mean all of them. A friend of mine was telling me that her granddaughter was scheduled to have 6-in-1 vaccines at a couple of months of age.
Yeah.
That's scary. I mean, if you think about it, just put in some common sense for a second to think about it without looking at what people are saying. Consider how much is that child's immune system ready to
Yes.
handle all of that?
Yeah. It's not the
And
anti-vaccine, it's the putting it all together as one instead of letting the body adjust to
oh,
with each reaction.
giving 6 vaccines in one is an
Yeah.
assault. Like
Yes.
if you can't do that, and to the child that's a couple of months old, I'm
Hmm.
horrified. This
Yeah.
is too much for the system to take. But fast forward to, teens, adults with kids, older adults. Now you've got processed food in the mix,
Yeah.
which does nothing but damage.
Hmm.
It's food products, it's consumable, it's not edible. And I make
Hmm.
a very distinct separation with those two things, because
Yeah.
when you're eating something that's nutritious, that your body can say, hey, I know what this is. I'm going to use this to build my brain, or,
Right.
fix my arm, or whatever it's going to do with it. Your body knows how to use that, and you become stronger. But when you're eating things like ultra processed food, which is sneaking in everywhere, and
Yeah.
genetically modified food, which the body
Hmm.
cannot recognize,
No.
its DNA, the food is altered in such a way that when it goes into the body, the systems are just saying, well, I don't know what this is. Where do I store it?
Yeah, we're eating waste.
Yeah, yeah, but it's not even recognizable. The
Yeah.
body's trying to figure
So
out,
it
where
just
do I put
disperses
this?
it. Get it out of me.
So,
Get it out of
so
me.
it's going to get stored in the liver, or it's going to get
Yes.
stored in the fat. And
Or the
now
colon. How many people with colon problems these days?
and that has its own issues
Hmm.
as well as the obvious ones. So, for example, the immune system, 80% of your immune system is in your digestive tract.
Hmm.
The other thing is the digestive tract is where you produce serotonin. And we've all heard of serotonin as being the thing you need so you can sleep, the feel good hormone.
Hmm.
Well, it is a mood regulator. If you have problems with your digestive tract, chances are you have problems with your serotonin production. So you don't need medication for serotonin reuptake inhibition, which is the
Hmm.
common antidepressant. You don't need that. You need to fix your gut. So
Yes.
what I did with the book is went for, what do we actually need, and how can we get there without products, without medications, without gimmicks, but just self-sufficient. What do you need to have, and what can you avoid? And that's kind of the premise behind my writing. And I've gone for a very holistic approach. So it's not just about what you eat, it's the environment from the
Yes.
perspective of chemicals that you use in your house. It's the environment from the air that you breathe. It's the stress that you have when you put the
Hmm.
TV on, all those things. And so the book really covers everything in a very sort of succinct way. So you don't have to
And
spend forever
usable. I
reading
mean,
it.
that's the thing with people sometimes get these, these books, things, and they're all kind of very um, bombardment with what's wrong and what you need. But unless you have something that says, but now this is what you can do, easy
Right.
steps. And because people won't do it unless it's, oh, this is too overwhelming, right? But okay, instead of like, well, what can I do? I'm like, what's the first step? The first step is actually asking what you can do and wanting to take action, right?
Absolutely. And so what I've done with the book is started at the obvious place, which is food. But what I've said is I'm not going through so much what's wrong with what's out
Mhm.
there. I do that a lot generally. So
Yeah.
if you follow me on any social media, it's out there. I do that a lot. But what I'm going for is, if you eat this, it's got these vitamins and minerals,
Hmm.
and this is why you need them. This is what they do.
Right.
And then I've gone through all of those, or as many as I have found anyway. And later in the book, I have recipes that
Mm.
have those foods in them. So
Yeah.
you don't have to think, well, how am I going to do that? That's difficult.
Hmm.
No, no, no. The point is, it's not difficult. You've been told it's difficult. You've been marketed to that it's
Yes.
difficult, but it's not. It's a very basic human activity, is to make food and to eat it. It really should be simple, but marketing would have you believe that you don't have time for that.
Yeah, you need to buy the processed food or take out food or this or that. And, I've got days where I have a full day and I don't feel like cooking for myself. So what I do like to do is I like to cook. I love a slow cooker. I love soups and I love my vegetable stews and I love all of that. And then it makes 4 or 5 meals. Well, and I
Mhm.
can just take one out of the freezer in the morning and cook it up, re boil it or whatever in the evening, and it's done. But I know it's nutritious. I know it's got
Because
everything in there because I've cooked it. I've let all the
exactly, you know
juices.
what's in.
I know what's in there, and everything's kind of cooked and stayed together. And so it's, yeah, we all like to kind of have that convenient fast food, but we can create our own fast food by cooking up some dishes that can literally be taken out of the freezer whenever you want.
Absolutely. It does not have to be complex.
No.
And the thing is, if when you go into the supermarket, if you're looking for things that are labeled food, or frankly, if they're labeled, then that is problematic before you even start because they've done stuff to it.
Yeah.
The produce on the outside, that's what you want to look at
Hmm.
and buy the carrots that don't have the label food over the top because actually they're carrots. You can recognize them as food. And they're not that expensive when you look at the pound for pound kind of
Hmm.
deal with the processed stuff that you're buying. But processed food has so many chemicals in it that people aren't aware of.
Right.
One of the ones I like to point out is a particularly, shall we say, lucky cereal that's very brightly colored. And one of the ingredients in that, this ingredient's in a lot of places actually, but let's go with this cereal. You can read the list and it says TSP
Hmm.
and it'll say for freshness. Well, TSP is trisodium phosphate. And if
Hmm.
you look up your local hardware store and type in the search bar trisodium phosphate, it will show you a box of powder. And when you look at what you use it for, it's to clean the walls before you paint them because
Wow.
it cuts through grease and dirt.
Aha.
Why is that in your child's cereal?
Yeah, why do we need that in our body?
And what do you expect it does for the child?
Yeah.
It certainly doesn't boost their immune system. Now, when you look up what the Food and Drug Administration have to say about it, they have it in a category called generally considered safe. Now, I don't know about you, but I prefer my food to be nutritious,
Yes.
not considered that it's not going to kill me right away.
But considered, not definite,
No.
considered, right? I
And
mean, it's up for debate. Yeah.
generally
Yeah.
considered safe. I mean, think of those words. Not one of them
Uh-huh.
is something you should be eating,
No. We
right?
always say if you can't
Just
pronounce it, don't buy it, right?
that's a thing too, but I'd love for people to pay some attention to, okay, what actually is this?
Yes.
What are they putting in there so you know why you're not buying it? Because the thought, going to our book, The Our Forgotten Children, for a
Hmm.
moment, the thought of the behaviors that kids
Hmm.
have,
Yeah.
which is my specialty, right?
Hmm.
But a lot of those behaviors are actually caused by the food the child's eating.
I 100%
You've
agree.
got the food dyes, you've got
Yes.
TSP, you've got various other things
Sugar galore,
that's sugar,
fructose.
this bombards the
Yeah.
body, it upsets the neurochemicals, which means that the child's not thinking straight to start off with. They're
Hmm.
trying to build their developing brain from the stuff that they eat,
Hmm.
and yet they're getting trisodium phosphate
Yeah.
that's generally considered
Yeah.
safe. I don't think so. A lot of the behaviors that we see in schools would go away on their own if the child was fed food rather than the stuff that the food industry tricks you into.
I
So
mean, I've been saying this for a long time. When we look at, I mean, I'm probably I'm at the bottom level of baby boomer, right? So I'm one of the youngest baby boomers. And I think my generation, maybe a squeeze out a generation after me, we were lucky enough to have food that came from the farmers market, came from the local farms. Um, we didn't, the processed food was beginning, but it wasn't kind of this mass thing. And so we really grew up having good, wholesome food, really nutritious food. And I used to live with a 91-year-old, and this woman still drives. She still cooks for herself. The only thing is short-term memory, especially when it comes to documents. But she still can hold a conversation and everything. And I look at that kind of stock and think genetically we grew up being nutritionalized. But when we look at our kids today with all the chemical this and the chemical that, the chemicals they put on their skin, the chemicals they take in their body, even the clothes that they wear, everything is just a bombardment to the body, and the body's constantly in defense of all this
Absolutely.
bombardment. And so we look 20, 30, 40 years down the road and look about, well, it has to be all these chemicals that are in everything that's changing our DNA and not for the better.
Absolutely. And I see advertisements. I mean, the US is unique in its use of advertisements for medication. You are bombarded continually that, you see these singing, dancing, happy people who are having a wonderful life and being terribly popular and all the things that you would ideally want. And all they have to do is take this little pill every day and everything is
Yes, yes.
resolved.
I love that, that this is for depression sideline. It may cause suicide.
Right.
You're right.
Well, typically, I watch these advertisements with a very critical eye. And typically,
Uh,
what you'll see is as they're progressing through the dancing, singing, and yay, everybody's happy, they'll get to a place where they do something different and it grabs your attention. So as you're watching that different thing that they're doing, that's the point when they list off all
yeah.
the side effects and different ways it can kill you. And by the time they've finished running through that faster than the human ear can pick up, then the scene turns back to what it started with the singing
Yes.
and dancing.
Yeah.
So it's very cleverly done, of course. Marketing is wildly clever.
Hmm.
And it's very cleverly done for you to think, well, I don't have to worry about my immune system. I can just take this pill, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
But they don't know what that pill's going to do to you because they haven't spent long enough looking at it. And the bar for what is acceptable in pharmaceuticals is very, very low. So
Hmm.
they only have to produce a couple of studies with around a 20% success rate, and it's good enough. They can then peddle that drug until there's a number of deaths and the FDA says, oh, well, maybe we need to take it off. But the other thing there is the FDA and the pharmaceutical industry, guess what?
Mm.
The
Uh-huh.
executives are either from the pharmaceutical industry into the FDA or from the FDA into the pharmaceutical industry. And guess who's paying their paycheck?
Exactly. Exactly.
So this stuff, it might sound like a conspiracy theory, and I wish it was.
It's
I
fact,
would totally
unfortunately.
wear the
Yeah.
tin hat, but it's
Yeah.
very easy to verify what I'm saying.
Yeah.
This is not stuff that's going to get lost in the ether. It's fact, it's right
Yes.
there. So when you think that these people are looking after you and they're looking after your health, and surely they wouldn't
Hmm.
sell that if it was bad for you, well, wake up call time is you have been othered. You, the population who are eating this food, are put into a category where your face is not seen. You are a number, you are a statistic. They don't actually care about you. What
Yeah.
they care about is the dollars. Who's
Yes.
spending the dollars? Where are, what are they spending them on? Let's go down that rabbit hole and do more of that. And typically, those products are taking your immune system and making it utterly dysfunctional so that now you end up needing
Yeah.
medication for things that shouldn't be an issue. They
Well, what
wouldn't
what are
be an
they in the
issue.
business for? They're in the business to make money. You being
Absolutely.
healthy and you taking ownership of your own body, your own health, and not getting the drugs, it affects their bottom line, and that's the only thing they're interested in. Many years ago,
Absolutely.
I had a wonderful woman who was a host on my network, and she did a show called Wise Health, which you can still find. She was with me for 5 years, retired at 81, and she used to call herself Snake Oil Woman because back in the 60s, she'd be advocating for all the nutritionals and different ways of living, and she called it pharmacare, Farm
Mhm.
care, and how that we can really live a very healthy and abundant life if we know what we're putting in our body and that it's, nature's support. This is what nature does. It supports us humans with all the nutrition it can give us. But, we've become, I think, obese in thought. More is more, right? And I
There's
want,
that. There's that, which is a lot of marketing. But
mm,
here's another thing with the rise in obesity. It is a sign of malnutrition.
yes,
And the malnutrition works this way. There are 6 different ways for you to be hungry. There are actually 6 hungers. And one of them is nutritional hunger, which is very important. So when you have your large, I'm trying not to use brand names, but you have your large burger,
Yeah.
the big one. We know those
Yes.
ones. You
The
have
stacked.
that. You have that. And okay, well, I'm still hungry. Let me have some fries. Ooh, I really need a soda to wash this down with. I'd like another one of those burgers. And you see people eating that way. And it's very easy if you're not in it to sort of look and say, whoa, that person's so greedy. No wonder you're
Yeah.
fat and all that judgmental language. But what's actually happening is that person is living on that kind of food product, and what they're getting is a ton of calories, but the body is not getting the nutrition it needs.
Right. So it's
And
craving.
so the body isn't looking for the aesthetic. The
No.
body's saying, yeah, that's great. We've got calories. Where's the nutrition?
Hmm.
Eat more.
Yeah.
And so your signals are saying you haven't had enough, eat more. And you haven't. It's true. You have not had enough. But what you haven't had enough of is the actual nutrients that your body needs. So you end up eating more and eating more of the stuff that's empty.
And
It's
that's
full of
killing you.
stuff you don't need.
Yeah.
So you end up with inflammation, which is
Hmm.
one of the leading causes of death, is actually inflammation that leads into chronic disease, such as heart disease. And then with that, you get larger and larger, and that brings its own problems.
Hmm.
You've got extra weight on the joints now, maybe you don't want to move so much, etc., etc. And the whole thing blows up. Your
Yeah.
immune system, meanwhile, is under the worst kind of siege imaginable. It's not given the tools it needs to work.
Hmm.
It's got all this inflammation going on. You've set yourself up for the worst possible situation. And how did that happen? Well, the food companies lied to you and the
Yes.
marketing lies to you. And by the way, cigarettes,
Hmm.
let's go there just for a second.
Yeah.
Cigarettes, it took years for people to actually, for the cigarette companies to admit, okay, yeah, all right, it makes you sick. And, they'd had the proof of cancer for about 30 years by the time they even grudgingly admitted something. Well, those cigarette companies didn't go away. They
No.
didn't say, oh, we've been caught being bad, we'll go away now. No, they bought the food companies. So you
Yeah.
have you have cigarette companies that now own the food companies.
Yeah.
So what do you think they're doing with the food products?
Hmm.
Do they have
Exactly.
your best health in
They're
mind?
shortcutting. If they're not going to put your nutrition in there, they don't care. It's all about it. It's always bottom line. Always
It
bottom line.
is. But it's
We
also there's no protection in there for you.
no,
You think
no.
there is, but there isn't.
Yeah.
The
There was
food companies provide their own research
yeah.
to the
Yes. No. And yeah.
right?
Nothing objective there, right?
You're gonna write your own check. And
Yes.
here's one of the things I discovered that food companies do too. Even when they employ scientists, and hey, people, come on, scientists need to make money too.
Hmm.
Everybody needs money to live. So no judgment there. But what is happening in a number of places is the scientists will do the study and the executives of the company say, okay, cool, thanks. We'll take it from here. We'll write the conclusion.
Right.
So the scientist isn't actually writing the conclusion.
Exactly.
And you can spin anything.
Hmm.
And statistics, particularly, the statistics don't lie, but they can be molded into any shape you like.
Hmm.
And that's what happens. So, it's not that the science is bad, it's that it's incomplete.
Yeah. It's in the wrong hands.
It's
Yeah.
in
There
the
was a
wrong
great
hands.
movie a few years ago, Thank You for Smoking, which was about somebody with the smoking and then the whole reveal of what was going on behind the scenes. And again, the title of this show is called Your Health is Your Choice.
Mhm.
So we need to take a little bit of time and go out, is this good for me? And, we have entire generations that have never eaten a vegetable.
We do.
And
Yes.
like green, no, no, I'll wear green, but I'm not going to eat green. I'm not going to eat that.
Uh-huh.
Right. And, for me, is that I am probably 80% vegan, 20% the other now and again, but don't touch my vegetables. You can have the meat. Don't touch my vegetables. I love my 6 vegetables a night, definitely, and more. But there's so much nutrition in those vegetables, and people think, well, how can you be a vegetarian? How can you be a vegan? You're not getting any nutrients if you're not eating meat. But yes, you are, because very often they carry even more nutrient than the meat that has been processed, that's been given antibiotics, that's been given this, that, etc. And I think that the reconstruction of our meat, because it's not coming from an organic source anymore, it is manufactured, and that you're eating all of that that's going into that meat there. We're eating that fear. And I think again,
Mhm.
we have to look at what am I putting in my mouth? Am I putting it in for just for the sake of eating something? Or am I putting something in where my body is singing, thank you, I'm loving this. I really am feeling great on this. And it becomes like nectar to you. Oh, this is
Mhm.
delicious, right? Because mentally it's fortifying your body and your whole body just feels so good about it.
Well, funnily enough, I run a weight loss program that where the focus is not weight loss. So
Hmm.
what happens is the person arrives and says, I want to lose 20 pounds. Okay, cool. Let's put the 20 pounds on a seat over there and let's look at what else is going on. And I work with them to discover where the emotional eating
Hmm.
ties are and what you'd like to do instead. Because food is not going to solve an emotional problem, it didn't cause it.
Right.
But you have stories attached to the food.
Mm.
So during this program, over 13 weeks, there's no calorie counting, there's no portion control, there's no banning of anything. There is a lot of learning about how that food works for your body. We do take out processed food. That's like, I'll heads up on that one. But the rest I'm not going to give away. But to say that people have amazing success with, first of all, waking up without aches and pains that they're used to living with,
Mhm.
and also more clarity, more energy. And you mentioned veganism, and that put me in mind of a client I've been working with since January, and she's vegan. And this program, people were concerned, like, how are you going to do this? Where's the protein coming from, and so on. Well, not only has she lost 50 pounds, but in January, she was on the sofa and really not moving very much and feeling kind of down about it. And now she's getting ready to do a half marathon and she's going to
Yay.
walk the Camino next year. She
Great.
feels amazing.
Yes.
She's out and about socializing.
Hmm.
And at no point does she get hungry. And that's one of the key things as well, because when you're hungry, and this is a tip I would like the listener to take right now and apply. When you are hungry, your food choices become more flexible, meaning you might intend to eat well and you'll pick up the junk because it's easy.
Yeah.
And your choices are more flexible because you're hungry. You want to eat something now. So your radar's kind of down. Don't get hungry. Make sure
Mm.
that you've got the good nutrition in first. And then if you still want some of the junk stuff afterwards, okay, nobody's going to tell you you can't have it, but make sure you've got the good nutrition
Yeah.
first. And chances are you won't have room for that.
Right.
And your immune system will thank you. It really will, because now it's got something to work with. Another thing I address in the book are habits to get your brain online.
Hmm.
And by online, I mean offline, but
Hmm.
online for life. So there's some habits there that I ask people to try so that you give your brain a running start with the day so that you make clearer, better decisions and you're not overwhelmed and stressed.
Right.
Because stress is a huge enemy of
Mm.
health and well-being. It causes weight to stay where it is because your body thinks you're about to run from a saber-toothed tiger, so why would you release weight? Of course not. But it causes all sorts of other imbalances and problems and increases inflammation. So stress is something we need to manage in the environment, very much so, in order to give your immune system literally a fighting chance. So I
Hmm.
have that in there as well, plus environmental stuff for your house. Like I've really come at this from a number of different angles. And then there's recipes in the book as well, so that you don't have to think, well, what do I do next? It's right there. And then there's a bonus children's chapter because, of course, I'm interested in the well-being of children. They are our future. They are who
Yes.
we're relying on
Yeah.
to save this planet. We didn't get it done. Every generation
Yeah.
is like, we're relying on you. Well, yeah, we haven't gotten it there so far. So
Well,
maybe if we feed them
That's what
right.
this was about, our forgotten children, right? Was talking about the systems that are broken and
Yes.
that are a disservice to our children and why our children are the way they are today. Right? It's a lack of nutrition for their psyche, for their spirit, for their heart, for their soul, for their body, for their mind, is because where the system is not embracing who they are, their very essence, and nutritionalizing them from all avenues. So that's what this book is about, which you contribute a chapter. She's the first
I
chapter in the book,
did.
folks.
I'm the first
Yeah, so
chapter.
yeah, and 14 other people, including myself, after that. And book two will come out later. I'm on our Forgotten Seniors at the moment. So, but that was the driving force behind there. It's like when you're aware, you care. And so
Right.
what you're doing is you're making people aware of choices that they've been making without understanding the impact that those choices had. No shame, no blame. It's
No,
just
not
didn't
at
know,
all.
just didn't know. Now I'm aware that that's bad for me and I could do this instead, which is good for me. I can now put my care into gear and start caring for myself by feeding myself mentally, physically, spiritually,
Right.
a more healthy diet.
And I'm very keen on people understanding why this thing is bad for you and why this thing is good for you, because you're more likely to pay attention to it if you
Yes.
understand the why behind it. So that's in there as well, is like why this is important and what you can expect the results to be when you apply this particular tip, if you will. So the whole book's full of things that are practical things to do. There's no space in there for judgment, calling
Right.
people out. Like I've done more of that
Mm.
on this podcast episode than is in the book. But the book is because this is what we're facing. There's
Exactly.
so much stress out there on our systems from so
Mm.
many ways. I mean, just think of the topic of safety.
Hmm.
Do our children feel safe? Do they feel
No.
safe at home? Do they feel safe at school?
Can they play in the street like we did as kids?
Are they
No.
safe when you've got the television on?
Yeah.
Because
Or the computer,
the computer,
the phone.
computer games,
Yes.
where is their safety?
Hmm.
Where does that child feel like they are nurtured and looked
Hmm.
after? And again, this isn't sort of pointing fingers at parents and saying, you're bad parents.
Hmm.
This is the society we currently live in.
Hmm.
How are you, the parent, or you, the teacher, how are you going to navigate that? That's
Yeah.
the question, because this is what we're all living in. And I mean, today is the perfect day to say,
Hmm.
how safe do you feel, right?
Yes. We're
And
on election
depending
day.
on
We
where you
record
are.
this earlier, folks.
Yes, it's election day. So, how many people feel safe right now?
Right.
Not many.
No.
Personally, my habit hack is to stay off social media,
Hmm.
other than to post good things and then leave again. And I'm not watching the news. I never watch the news because it's not news, it's propaganda.
Yes.
So I don't watch any of that, but I'm limiting the stress input.
Yeah.
And that's helping me a lot. Now, if more people did that, there'd be less shouting and
Yeah.
there'd be less stress, and your immune systems, just from that alone, would be doing better. But think about this season as well from another aspect, which is we've just had Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
You in Canada have already had your Thanksgiving. We
Yep.
have it coming up in the US. And then you've got Christmas and then you've got New Year's. So, what do all of these have in common? Excess,
Yes.
excess food and drink,
Yes.
and a lot of rules around food and drink. Well, I have to eat this because grandma made it,
Mm.
and she'll be sad if I don't eat it. I have to have that because we always do it, or whatever it is. But there's a lot of rules around this, and there's an awful lot of sugar involved.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, this is a season when we get sick.
Hmm.
So, is it the cold, or is it actually all the sugar that you're hammering your system with?
Yes.
And I'm going to say, if you step away from the sugar,
Hmm.
just as a test, just see how do you do? Do you need all those cold remedies that you've been buying? Or can you actually sail through this with no problem?
Hmm.
Because I'm going to say, chances are,
Yeah.
unless you've got a significant underlying health issue, you're going to get through without the problems you anticipate right now.
Or
Because
you're going to,
sugar,
even if you have an underlining, right, you're
well, it's
going to
still
get
going to be
through it
better.
better.
Yes.
You're going to
It's
be able to cope with things and recover quicker. right?
It's
Because
still
that's
going
the
to
whole
be
point of
better
it.
for sure.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
sugar is, I mean, I'm not a big sugar person. I don't have it in coffee or tea or anything like that. Um, yes, sometimes it's in certain things, and you've got to read your labels. But I do like dark chocolate, right? So if
Hmm.
you still like something that is sweet, look at what kind of sugar is it? Is it fructose or what? Because that on how much sugar is in there.
And
Because
here's a tip I'd like to give you for this one. There are 257 names of sugar.
yeah, I know.
So what the food industry does is when they're writing the labels, the the way it works is the ingredient that there's most of goes at the top. Okay. And then the next most, and you go down the list. Well, that works wonderfully, except when they split the ingredients. So you can have 8 different kinds of sugar in there,
Wow.
and they will appear to be insignificant. Why? Because they're in 8 parts. If you put them all together, they're actually going to be the first ingredient.
Hmm.
But that's not how the labels work. And while we're on the topic of labels, I just want to mention that legally, in the US at least, the food companies can have a plus or minus of 20% accuracy on their calorie
Wow.
counts.
20%. Again,
20%. So
accountability, folks. Where's their accountability?
So if you're buying a protein bar, for example, and it's 200 calories on the label, and you have accounted for that in your calorie counting, newsflash, people, it doesn't work. But okay, you've accounted for that. You think you're getting 200 calories, but actually you're getting 240 calories
Wow.
because the food labels aren't going to err on the side of saying that there's more than there is. They're always going to go for the bottom, right? So if you're on a calorie counting diet, that's the reason you're having a hard time is because it doesn't work. And the
Right.
reason it doesn't work is because you're working against the odds. The labels are not accurate.
Right. If
And
you've
the
got
other
the
thing
right
about
nutrition.
that is trans fats.
Yes, yes.
Now, when you pick up, say you pick up a bag of potato chips, and you look at the label and it says, let's go for 13 servings. And you look at it and you say, well, that's ridiculous. That means I eat 3 chips. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And so we ignore it because it doesn't make sense. It's just silly. And you eat the bag, right? Because a bag is a serving, really. But there was a method to their madness. The reason there's 13 servings in there is because so long as trans fats are 0.5 of a gram or less, they can label it as zero. So all you do is you have the trans fats in the food, and then you figure out how many servings do I have to say there are to bring it to 0.49,
Mhm.
right? And so if you've got a ridiculous amount of servings for a package of something,
It's because they're
that's
hiding the trans fat.
probably why.
Right.
You could have a whole 5 grams of trans fats in there.
Right.
And that's a lot. It might not sound like a lot, but I assure you, if you look up the damage that that stuff does to your
Yeah.
body, you're having, it's like me saying, here, would you like a teaspoon of arsenic?
Yes.
It's not going to hurt you right away, don't
It's
worry.
over
Here,
time.
have your teaspoon of arsenic. You would not do that, right? But because of the way we're set up,
Yes.
by the rules and the bending of the rules, you end up thinking you're having something that's 100 calories and it's actually 120. And then you think there's no trans fats, but actually there's a teaspoon worth of trans fats, and so on. And
And salt.
it's salt, and it's
Oh,
not good quality salt.
no,
So here's the thing, we
no.
need salt, but we don't need the stuff that's got the anti-caking agent and what have you wrapped in it
Right.
because your body doesn't need anti-caking.
Right.
It doesn't
No,
need it.
I'm so allergic to the salt. If I go anywhere, no salt, no salt, no salt. And they kind of look at me, you need salt for flavor. No, because I know it's not the right salt. And my body will immediately react to that. It says, I don't want that salt out of my body immediately. And
Mhm.
over salt, over sugar, over everything else. And it's like, let's stop and look at it. The fact is, we're being lied to, left, right, and center. There is no protection over our food, over pharmaceutical, of really getting the truth, of really telling people beware. And so really what is our choice is to stay away from the center aisles
Yeah.
and go to the organic foods because, okay, they may not be 100% organic depending where they're grown, but at least they are going to carry more nutrition than those that have now got, I call it Agent Orange, but it comes from the same root, whatever, on it because it's meant to be banned, but instead they've renamed it and used it in a different way. So, we have to look at you're going to pay a wee bit more for your organic vegetables, and you need to eat more of that substance in there. But in the long run, you're saving money because you're not constantly hungry eating garbage. Your body is more fortified and you have more energy and you need less food in it because it's getting the nutrition.
Exactly. Well said. That's beautifully stated. And the thing is, the company that made Agent Orange is the company that has a stranglehold on corn and soy in the
Mm,
US. So, any products that you're buying with those things in have been brought to you courtesy of Agent Orange,
yes,
essentially. So
yes.
this is something to be aware of. Now, it can be overwhelming to think
Hmm.
about all the ways you are being attacked,
Yes,
essentially, by these companies. And that's not my intention to overwhelm, hence the book,
right.
because the point to the book is I'm taking that out of the equation and
I'm showing you
saying,
what you can do.
okay,
Yep.
this is what you need.
Yeah.
Look at this. And here are options for kids because, their taste buds are a little bit different and they're learning. So there are different options there. Now, interestingly, the recipes that I have in the book are all but two, I think, possibly three, are vegan. And
Mm,
that wasn't necessarily a statement for veganism, but it contains all the things your immune system needs. That's one
hmm.
point. And the other one is if you're eating that recipe as a side dish, does it have to have meat in it?
Yes.
If you really need meat, add meat. Like
Yeah.
it's not complex. But I
Right.
wanted to mention that because sometimes people get a little freaked out when I say, well, the recipes are vegan. No, I'm
Oh,
not
lettuce
telling
leaf.
you.
That's all we're going to get. This is brilliant
Right.
vegan food. Absolutely delicious. Yeah.
And the thing is, it's not that at all, but this is your basic recipe. It has what you need in it. Now, if you want to add other things, go for it.
Yeah.
Absolutely knock yourself out. But I'm not promoting a particular lifestyle other than a lifestyle that involves you taking responsibility
Yeah.
for your care. Because here's another thing. Medical doctors at best have an hour to a day of nutrition in their entire learning.
Yes.
They
Yes.
don't know food. And here's the thing, we can be upset about that, but they don't need to know about food. If we use the medical profession the way we used to use it years ago when I first became a nurse, right? You would go to your doctor if you actually had something significant going on,
Yeah.
and they would look at that and they'd sort of ask you a few lifestyle questions, but then they'd give you what you needed to fix that thing. And it wouldn't be excessive and it wouldn't be long term.
That's the
And
point.
and we
Yes. Yes.
didn't use antibiotics that much.
Right.
And like I've had people laugh at me for this because it does sound kind of antediluvian. But when I first became a nurse, in our hospitals in the UK, we would use salt water a
Hmm.
lot. We'd use saltwater compresses when there was a wound infection, and we would use salt water to cure what ailed you in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, particularly when it comes to infections.
Hmm.
Because here's the thing, salt water is a medium where bacteria cannot thrive. It
Right.
dies in salt
Hmm.
water. It doesn't hurt if you're using a solution, right? So I've helped people who have had bad reactions to antibiotics. They've had two different courses of antibiotics and the infection's still there. And I'm like, here, use the saltwater compress. And within 24 hours, the infection's gone
What about
because that's
digestion,
all
though?
you
If you have
need.
antibiotics or something, like I'm a bronchial asthmatic, and when I do get that bronchitis, it's always vicious. With having two beautiful grandsons that keep the petri dishes, they keep giving me stuff. I've had bronchitis twice this year, which is because I'm around them all the time. Um, and it gets more aggressive, you need stronger antibiotics. Is there anything you can do to take, like, you can't drink salt water necessarily, not good for you, but is there anything you can do to help the antibiotics along by hitting the infection internally?
So that would be a place where I would look at things like the nutrition ideas that I have in the book, but also herbs and
Mm-hmm.
essential oils
Yeah.
and a humidifier with some eucalyptus in, for example, can be very helpful. Lavender is often a very nice, it's relaxing, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also healing.
Mm-hmm.
And lavender, by the way, if you had lavender oil and you put a few drops in water, if you have a burn, like a scald from hot
Yeah.
water or something, lavender will have you healing in no time. It's faster than anything else I know of for external healing. So the internal, the respiratory stuff, I would start looking at herbs
Mm-hmm.
and I would look at essential oils. Now, oil of oregano, for example, you need to be careful with the doses of these things, but that's
Yes.
antiviral.
Yeah.
So that can be very helpful. There's so much out there. And if you think about it, aspirin came from the bark of the white willow tree.
Mm-hmm.
That is where we first got aspirin from. So when people sort of think, well, that's not really going to do much, actually, it does everything. What the pharmaceutical companies did was they took it, chemicalized it so that they
Yeah.
could make money out of it. That's
Exactly.
basically how that works.
Right.
And, if you ever,
You're not really getting, the core product anymore. You're getting a
no,
bastarded version of it. Yeah, that they can make
absolutely.
as cheaply as possible and sell
But
as
it
high as possible.
But it comes from natural ingredients.
Mm,
Digitalis, which is a very long used medication. I mean, even back in the day when I was a nurse, we would use that for people with congestive heart failure. Well, Digitalis is oil of foxglove,
hmm
basically. That's where it comes from.
I
So
mean, as they say, for every disease, a few feet away, there is a cure. I'm a tea tree lover.
absolutely,
I love tea tree, right? I think,
tea
wonderful
tree is
that.
great for fungal infections.
Exactly. And right now, what I'm using to rebuild my lungs is I'm using cordyceps,
Okay.
a mushroom formula, because
Mhm.
actually back in the past that changed my asthma quite considerably. So apparently reishi mushrooms are very good for that as well, at rebuilding the lungs. There's always an answer. And going back to our health is our choice, nutrition, exercise, mindset, and all of that is important. But there are also all these other things out there that if you educate yourself onto it and make sure that you buy the pure product, not the,
Yes.
chemicalized product, that will be there to serve you. But we we investigate buying a new car or a new computer or a new phone more than we do about looking after our own body.
Yes. And the thing is, we buy a lot of products because it's okay, this is going to be the solution to my problem before it's a problem. Think of
Yeah,
supplements, for
yeah,
example. I got to tell you, if you actually look up who owns that supplement you're about to buy, you might be surprised as to the source. And then you might want to think about, do they actually have anything in here that my body can use?
right.
Because here's the thing, for example, calcium. Calcium is not the same as calcium. There are
hmm
different types. Some are bioavailable, meaning your body can use them, and others are more likely to give you kidney stones than to do anything helpful
Right.
because your body can't use it. And this is not going to be differentiated when you're looking at supplements. But if you're eating the kind of foods that I have in the book, the kind of foods we've been talking about today, this is going to take away the need for supplements. You don't
hmm
need them. Now, you will hear people saying, well, the soil quality is no good anymore, and we've got this, we've got that. Yes, but also who is telling you this? There's a whole study out there called agnotology, and agnotology is utterly fascinating. It's hard to find books on it, but I do have one. And there's a university degree you can do in agnotology if it's still available. But what that is a study of is the use of manipulation by large organizations such as political parties, both sides, people, both
hmm
sides, food companies, pharmaceutical industries. And what they do is when research comes out that says, hey, this thing's a bad idea, they will very quickly put half a dozen other quote unquote research studies out there that dispute this. And what
Yes.
happens is it sows doubt.
Yeah.
But people start to say, well, is that really, is the food really enough? I think I probably need supplements because, these studies said this thing.
hmm
And the study that's legit gets inundated and lost with all the false stuff that's put out there intentionally. And this confusion, this deliberate sowing of confusion and doubt is done by all of the organizations I just mentioned as a matter of routine. It's how they control what you're doing with your dollars and what you're doing with your attention. And you're not going to think about this being out there. But again, this is researchable. You can find it. I'm not saying anything that's not out there in print. It is absolutely findable. So this is
Yes,
what
so
you're
you've
up
got to
against.
trust the science, folks, right? That's the thing. I know that you've been told by certain parties, don't trust the science, it's all a hoax, a whole lie. No, the people that are using and misusing the science are the ones that are mistruths. But if you go to the core of what that science is, right, then you're going to get that truth. And from there, you can deduce, how and whether you're going to use it or not.
And I'd like to give a sort of quick shortcut for looking at that. So if the person listening is sort of thinking, well, I don't have time to do research.
Right.
Holy smokes, and how do I know a real article from a fake one and so on? So here's my quick trick for you, which is go to googlescholar.com because that's free. And you can look up the topic that you want. So foods for immune system, for example. So you look up the topic you want. The first thing you're going to look at is the abstract, which is the very first part, and that will tell you basically what they're looking at in the study. Then you want to look at who paid for it, which is absolutely key. The abstract tells you, yeah, this is the article I'm looking for. Who paid for it will pretty much tell you what the outcome's going to be because,
Yeah.
if you're looking up, is dairy good for you? And the research you're looking at was paid for by the dairy lobby or the farmers or something, then you can be pretty sure what the outcome's going to be,
Can be
right?
misconstrued, yes.
That's not going to be the science I suggest you look at.
Right.
So the first thing is the abstract to make sure you got the right thing. The second thing is who paid for it. And then the third thing is what's the conclusion? And if the conclusion makes sense to you,
Mm.
you may or may not want to wade through the article because there's a lot of technical stuff in
Yeah.
there that unless you really are into it, you don't need that, but you do need to know who paid for it and what did they get from this.
Right.
Really read the conclusion carefully because there can be some sneaky little sentences in there that make an entire difference into what you think you're
There's
reading.
a reason why they hire the lawyers, right? Is to rewrite the things. And, you
There
know,
is a reason. So
yeah.
researching, looking for the articles that give you the information you're looking for doesn't need to take that long. It doesn't need to be that painful. You just need to kind of know what your topic is, have a look in those couple of places, and then, see what you've got there. See if you find more articles that agree. That's
Mm.
another thing, and who paid for them. Because that's the bottom line is, whoever paid for the article, you can bet if they've paid for a research study, what happens if they don't get the results they're looking for is you change the question
Ah,
until the
it
results you've
fits.
got fit.
Yeah.
And so this is the way you can play with the research that comes out. So you really need to look at what's the abstract? What are they asking
Mm.
here? What are we doing? I have 4 degrees, so I've got a lot of practice in looking at research, and I don't like to spend all day reading the minutiae. So you can bet that this sort of system I've just given you is one I've tried and tested many, many times, and it's the quickest way to get through the most research.
And there again, you've just made a case in point. There is somebody out there that's done this research for you. Do your own investigation of who is actually the person that's doing this due diligence and is very anxious to share with you the facts that they have found, right? You may not want to do it, but I guarantee you there's somebody out there that has. And, they've done that work for you. What conclusion have they come up with? Does it fit with the common sense? Or can you deduce something from it yourself? Because it's always about your attitude around something and what you're going to do with it. And, that is another point. I've interviewed an awful lot of people in the 80s, going on 90s, even 90s. And, what I ask them, what makes you so vigorous and enjoyment of life? And it always goes down to attitude, gratitude. Right. And that is such a huge component into our well-beingness, isn't it? That de-stressing and everything else, that nutrition. And I think we can change the chemistry of our body very much if we come from a place of gratitude attitude, and look at
That
the sunny side of the street rather than, the rainy side.
That helps tremendously. And I'm going to say the quality of the food that you eat
Yeah.
will affect how your brain shows up in that
Hmm.
equation. It's a lot easier to be positive when you've got good food in you. And
Yeah.
it's a lot harder. And you can't make good decisions when your brain is overwhelmed from too much technology and it's suffering from a lack of good nutrition. You can't do good things from that place. You haven't got the raw materials. So
Mm.
it's really important to get that right. And I would say when you see products, particularly there's a current medication out there, GLP-1, which is, otherwise known as Ozempic and various other names, that is tremendously problematic and it is being peddled, and I use that word intentionally,
Hmm.
by people who ought to know better. One of the
Hmm.
things with the weight loss there is it reduces roughly 50%, according to studies, roughly 50% of your weight loss comes from muscle.
Hmm.
Now, when you come off the medication, if you try coming off, you will put the weight back on, but it won't be muscle. So what you've
Hmm.
done now is you've swapped muscle for fat. You've also, one of the common side effects is gastroparesis, which means basically the motility, the movement of your bowel isn't happening. It gets paralyzed.
Mm.
You get bunged up. Now, I mentioned right in the beginning, serotonin, the mood balancer, is produced in the gut. It's not the only thing, though, and
Right.
it's also where your immune system's happening. You got a lot of things going on there. Now, if you're going to stop everything up so that you don't have room to eat,
Mm.
this is probably one of the worst ways you could go about weight loss. So
Mm.
you're killing yourself to look a certain way. And
Yes.
then you end up not actually looking the way you hoped because you've lost that muscle tone in the face.
Hmm.
You've got no backside. There's a
Everything's
look.
drooped. Yes.
There's a look that is Ozempic butt, Ozempic face. That's what it's called.
Right.
And doctors will tell you, or the small print tells you too, that once you're on it, you're supposed to stay on it. So if you're on this injection once a week for life,
Wow.
is that the way you want to live? Really?
Is there going to be any muscle left? I mean, I
It
heard
causes
that.
problems. Your heart is a muscle.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah. And my brother was saying that there was a study in England where people were taking these fast weight loss pills that were going blind in one eye. And I spoke to somebody else about that, and they said, yes, yes, I know of these cases. There's certain people that are going blind from it. And it's like, there
Wow.
are easier ways of losing weight, and a lot of it is patience. Patience, be patient, right? A lot of it, well, I've got to go to the gym and I've got to work out vigorously. If you're not used to that, you're going to overexert or harm yourself. Everything is like one step, two step, three step, change the mindset, change the body set, change the heart and soul set, change the other set, and then it will kind of come about as a part of your lifestyle that you don't even look at as something, that is unusual.
And the thing is, the program I mentioned earlier that I do, it's all whole food
Hmm.
and there's no deprivation, there's no hunger, there's none of this, and people lose weight.
Right.
I have a client right
You've
now
taken
who's,
away the stress of, I've got to lose weight, I've got to lose weight, right?
yeah, I always give it a seat. Like, let's not
Yes.
focus on that. But I have a
Yeah.
client right now who's a former power lifter and used to being very strong and used to being a certain weight and a certain look and so on. And it's been a battle her entire life, fighting against the food to be in that space, and really fighting with her body basically to
Mm.
be there. And now she's gone through this program with me, and she said to me the other day, I feel kind of weird about this because I'm really not working hard and the weight is melting off. Is it going to stop? And then the two of us, had a good laugh at that because like you're eating everything you want to eat, right? You're not
Yes.
hungry and you don't starve. You have variety of food. Is that correct? And she's like, yeah. why am I losing weight? And she's looking at me like I don't understand this.
Was there a magic wand that you waved?
And we needed to discuss a little bit the whole thing of where she was before and that energy of struggle and that
Yes.
perception that you only
Mm,
get here from struggle. And when you have that perception, it means that for a lot of people, weight loss isn't going to be possible. It's just,
yeah.
I can't work that hard. I can't
Mm,
struggle like that. I don't, lack of self-efficacy, right? I don't have what it takes to do that. And so that person, aided and abetted by their medical or their friends or whoever, somebody is going to say to them, here, you don't have to worry about that. Take this injection.
yeah.
And that is the worst thing you can do for yourself because your immune system does not love this injection.
No.
Your body does not love this
Hmm.
injection, and your health is absolutely going to suffer. No question. You might lose the weight. Yes, the scales will give you the number you're looking for. But that, I got to tell you, is not actually the important number. Here's one of the things that people discover when I'm working with them is they will change shape first
Hmm.
and clothes fit differently. Now, scale might not be moving very much. What's happening? Your inflammation is going down.
Right,
That's
right.
what's happening.
Yeah.
So, a health marker, a very important health marker, is improving dramatically. Those aches and pains go away, clarity of thought
Mhm.
comes, you sleep better, you've got more energy for the day, and your body is changing shape, but the number on the scale doesn't necessarily reflect much. And yet, look at what's happening. There's so much going on there and the weight will come down. But my point is that's not your best indicator.
Right. So it's
And
inches, not pounds, right?
it's all sorts of things. It's how you
Yes.
feel
Yes.
and how you change shape and so on. Those are much more of a clue as to whether you're going in the right direction or not. But when you have a system that's offering supplements, products, gimmicks, medications, all these things, I have to tell you, and I put it in the book, you do not need that.
Yeah.
That is not how to get to your ideal weight. That's not how to get to your ideal health. It's exactly not how to do that.
You're
It's
right.
precisely the wrong path. They're actually shoving you in the wrong direction here. And,
It's setting
doctors,
you up for you to go down a different medical road to fix,
absolutely.
right? To
Oh,
fix what they broke, right?
you are going to be on so many medications to
Hmm.
deal with all those
Yeah,
symptoms. Mind blowing. Now, the
exactly.
thing is, your doctor has, if you have one, they have very
Yes.
few minutes to spend time with you.
Hmm.
They don't have education on nutrition and the medication stuff. They believe, because this is where their education comes from, the pharmaceutical industry is telling them what the drug does.
Exactly. And they're
And
buying it
so
carte blanche.
with the best will in the world, this is what the doctor has to work with.
Yeah.
And then, particularly in the US, they have an administration who wants dollars. They want to see that your patient comes in and they go out and they've got medication, and that's what they want to see. And when that doesn't happen, the doctor gets an earful. I know. I have a
Oh,
client who's a doctor and
I
she's
know.
told me about this.
I've interviewed doctors who've been blacklisted for
Right.
going holistic with their patients.
I
Right.
asked this particular doctor if you gave lifestyle advice at work instead of giving medication, would that be okay? And there
No.
was silence.
Yeah.
And then she said, no, no, it wouldn't. I'd probably get fired because
You have to push
nobody get,
procedure, you have to push drugs, you have to push a return client.
yes,
Yeah.
nobody gets paid for
Hmm.
lifestyle changes.
No.
And so this is the fact of life. And
Yeah.
again, you could spend time judging how awful that is, etc., etc. And that's just a rabbit hole. It takes away from your attention on, okay, that's miserable. What can I do for myself? Given that this is the situation, this is the reality, this is what we're working with, how are you going to navigate your best path? Because that's what you can control. That's what you can do. Hence, the immunity code being your path to fixing it for yourself. It's absolutely attainable. And here's the thing, if you're buying Whole Foods and you're buying organic or even regenerative farming meat, which is like the best standard we can get at the moment, if you're buying these things, yes, it costs more. However,
Hmm.
if
Hmm.
you're not buying those products
Yes.
and those supplements and those other things that you typically throw in the shopping basket, you'll find your shopping bill actually comes out a bit less
Mm-hmm.
and you're healthier for it. And here's an example of another client who was, like, he's not a client right now, but this chap came to me looking for improving his nutrition. He was actually, his weight and his shape, his fitness and everything was great. He just wanted to get his nutrition to another level. So we worked through the program a little bit. And then at a certain point, we hit the whole organic versus, regular stuff from the store. And he said, well, I can't afford to buy organic meat. It's going to cost so much. And then the next day sent me a photo of a big tub of creatine supplement and said, is this a good supplement? So I looked it up. $72 for this supplement.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, I would like you to try something. Experiment with not buying the creatine and buying the organic meat. Eat more meat. I actually said eat more meat because this person works out a lot, but eat the leaner meats, not the crunched up stuff, and eat the high quality organic food and see how you feel. And I don't believe he's had to buy creatine since,
Mm-hmm.
because that's not the best use of that dollar.
Right.
And he was shocked when I said, do you think maybe you could afford the organic food if you didn't buy that
Right.
supplement? And he kind of looked at me and said, I hadn't even thought of that.
Right.
Of course, if I'm doing that, I don't need to do this.
Yes.
Wow, and he went off ready to try it. And he's in great health, he's in great fitness and so on. And I think he learned something about how to improve his nutrition that works for him. And the thing is, your nutrition is individual. So when you're looking at meal plans, like I very intentionally have not put in a meal plan because what you need to eat and what I need to eat
Yeah,
are not the same. What
exactly.
our taste buds are not the same. If you have an autoimmune condition, and many, many people do these days, myself included, then you need to eat certain things and not eat certain things.
Right.
It depends on what triggers what you've got. And that's part of the learning process is, okay, how does that food work for me? And does it work for you? And so on. For
And
example,
it's
one of the
trial and
things,
tribulation, willing to go through it, right? I mean, you
well,
don't know if it
it's an
works for you unless you're
experiment.
willing to give it a try. And then you
Yep.
you hit that, oh, not only does this taste good, but I'm loving how it's making me feel. Again, back to being aware, right?
And the other thing is when you stop eating the chemical foods,
Mm-hmm.
processed stuff, an interesting thing happens. The body is always regenerating. That's how
Yes.
we live. That happens continually. Well, along with everything else, your taste buds
Mm.
regenerate. And what happens when you take processed food out and all those chemical additives is your taste buds are like a flower bed that have just been given spring and they're like,
Right.
woo, they grow and they're like, yeah, let's get the food. And food tastes differently. And
Yes.
when you have whole food,
Mm-hmm.
you're mind blown as to what
Yeah.
that tastes like because you couldn't taste it before you didn't have the taste buds for it.
Right.
You
I mean,
literally didn't have the taste buds, which is
the other
mind blowing.
the other thing we need to look at is that your body is going to go through a detox stage. Right? It isn't just all of a sudden you're putting good food in your body, but your body now needs to disperse all of those chemicals and detoxins. And so you may go through a transitional period as your body is detoxing. And obviously, it takes at least 3 months for the cellular structure to rebuild. And so while you're putting the good in, it's dispersing the bad out. And, look at that 3 month mark of where you're at and how do you feel now? And you will feel now the nutrition is really being able to go to work and really nutritionalize you because it's not fighting the toxins that are in there anymore.
Right. And I have to say that, funnily enough, 3 month mark, that's how long the program takes
Mm-hmm.
to start with. And then people typically stay to learn more things. But that 3 months, there's a system to getting sugar out of your body and to getting the chemicals out of your body that isn't brutal, right? Like
Right.
you're not suffering. The whole point of this is that it's lifestyle. And yeah, you'll have the occasional thing come up, and that's great. That's a learning point. Oh, hey, look what happens when I eat this or when I don't eat that. So, for
Yes.
example, I discovered, because of course I do this too. So I discovered that white potatoes I love baked potatoes, but
Mm-hmm.
man alive, they do not love me.
Mm-hmm.
And when I eat potato, it doesn't go well. But if I eat sweet potato, that's fine.
That's
So
me too.
there's
Yes. Yeah.
different things that I can and can't have. Some people do really badly with nightshades. The thing is, you get used to a certain feeling of ick.
Yeah.
You're not aware you have until it's gone.
You're
And the
right.
same client with the creatine stuff, he also said to me, I went out for a meal and I couldn't get exactly what I wanted. So, I ended up eating what the restaurant gave me, etc., etc. He said, and, half an hour later, I felt awful. And then
Yeah.
I realized, wait a minute, I used to feel like this all the time.
Uh-huh.
And the poor
Uh-huh.
guy was shocked.
Yes.
And I said, well, this is fantastic because now you know something.
You've got to measure. Yeah.
Now you know what it is,
Yeah.
and you know how you feel when you feel well,
Mm-hmm.
and you know how you feel when you've just got this standard ick
Yeah.
that most of us live with. And you don't know because you're always like that. It's like the person who's always tired when they wake up in the morning. Do you know what it's like to feel energetic in the morning?
Mm-hmm.
No. Well, it doesn't mean it's not possible. It just means you're not there,
Exactly.
but you could
Exactly.
be. It's possible. So it's finding the way to get there. And I assure you, the path does not involve medication. I'm not telling
Mm-hmm.
anybody to come off anything you're already on. That's for you and your doctor to discuss. But what I am saying is don't add to your repertoire if you don't
Yeah.
absolutely need to. There are many natural ways that you can start, pick a thing today. Do you want to start on your food or do you want to start on the brain stuff that I have in there of getting your brain online so that you can
Yeah.
make better decisions and so that you feel
Mm.
less stress and less overwhelm? Or do you want to start in your environment?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter where you start, just start.
Exactly.
Pick a
Well,
thing,
the biggest leap is the first step, right?
right? Just
So,
pick a thing,
yes.
and play with it. See
Yeah.
if that works for you.
Well, if all these other ways are quick fixes, and we know, especially when you get to an older age, nothing happens quickly that's good, right? The
You
good
spent a
things
life
happen.
getting to where you are, right?
Exactly.
And that's one of the things that I do like to point out to people is look, you want to lose how many pounds in a month, or you want to be in this place in this short space of time. You spent a lifetime getting where you
Yes.
are. How are you going to be different in 4 weeks?
But
We,
I
we
think
can
there's
do
an,
it quickly, but not like that.
yeah, not
That's
healthily.
medication talk,
Exactly. But there's another point to it as well. Oh, I need to lose 20 pounds. Do you?
right?
Because
Why?
maybe it is your body, as you said, reshaping itself because of less inflammation, nutrition really working in your body. You're going to end up the size that your body wants you to be, but it's not about how many pounds you lose. It's how healthy do you feel,
Mhm.
right?
Exactly.
So I think if we can get away from the poundage and look at, I want to feel healthy. I want to have the energy. I want to have, that abundance of health in my life where I don't get susceptible to everything.
Mhm.
That is all that you need. And whether you reshape or you lose weight, if you're, but I did a show with somebody, she calls herself the fat chick. She is big. She always has been big. It's just the way her body is. But she's as healthy as anything. And so
Right.
it comes down to, she could take all the weight loss and it would maybe lose a bit of weight, but that's her shape. And I think at some point we've got to stop comparing. Well, I need to be like this person. I've got friends that are older than me. That have got gorgeous bodies. They can wear bikinis. You look at the Golden Bachelor right now, and look at her body. She looks like a 15-year-old. It's just that's the way they're designed, and it's not. We can't compare. So bottom line is, do you feel healthy? Do you have a better quality of life? Right? Are you being able to do the things that you want to do that you couldn't do before? Was it about the poundage or was it about the health? And I think if we go to it from the health aspect, whatever pounds need to go will go, whatever reshaping will happen, but allow the body to dictate what that is based on how healthy it feels.
Absolutely. And what it's called is food freedom, right? Where
Yeah.
instead of saying, well, I have to eat the donut at 3 o'clock because I eat a donut every day at 3 o'clock, that means the donut is the boss of you. It's
Yeah.
telling you you have to eat it at this time. Whereas when you discover what your connection is to that donut, why do you feel you have to eat it? Is it fear of missing out because if you don't get it, somebody else will?
Hmm.
Is it because you slept badly and you have a slump and you need the sugar, or you feel like you do? Like, what is the reason for that? Because once you work on that reason and you fix what ails you, quite literally, you can then be in a place where you look at the donut and you can choose, do I want it or do I not? Do I want to feel how it makes me feel?
Uh-huh.
And I'm talking health wise, not emotion wise.
Yes.
But you have a choice now. You are the boss of you,
Yes.
and the donut isn't. And that's what I like to work on with people so that they are empowered to then, eat this, don't eat that doesn't make sense. This is not helpful. You don't have any buy in. You're just
Mm.
doing what somebody else tells you to do, and that will last a short period of time. But if you understand, oh, well, I eat this because I feel that way, an example, because stories I think are a good way of giving the example. Another client, her size was great. She didn't need to lose weight particularly, but she was curious to see what would happen if she could improve her nutrition. So she came in for a curiosity perspective, and she did it pretty well, gotta say. By and large, that was a good way of eating. But she had this thing about European style pastries. And so I asked her about that, let's look into that. And it turned out that this woman, she lives in the US, but she's from Poland.
Mm.
And I asked her, when do you eat the pastries? And she looked at me like I'd lost the plot and said, well, when I want them. And I said,
Hmm.
okay, but when is that? And what we discovered was she misses home. And
Yes.
so she reaches for a taste of home. It
Nostalgia
seems
eating.
it seems obvious when you look at it objectively,
Yeah.
but when you're in it, you
Yeah.
don't see it. And so I said to her, well, this is great. We know a thing now. How about next time you want to reach for the pastries, phone home, talk
Yeah.
to everybody you can in Poland for as long as you like keep them up, whatever you need to do, talk to them. And then if you still want the pastry, have the pastry. I'm not taking anything off you
Right.
because as soon as your brain feels deprived, you crave the thing you're deprived of,
Right.
which is why it never works to tell people not to eat chocolate ever.
Right.
In the history of ever, that does not work.
Yeah.
And I don't do that, right? But I had her do that, and within a couple of weeks, she'd pretty much stopped eating the pastries because they were no longer interesting.
Right.
They weren't covering for her missing home. And
Hmm.
once she realized what that was, now she has the choice. You want the pastries? You don't want the pastries. You choose, but you're not eating
And
them
you're not
because you miss
denying
home.
or she's not denying herself that, yeah, I really do like a pastry today. I like them. It's the right, coffee with friend.
Then
Okay.
you can
But
have
it
it.
isn't a substitute
It's
for the loneliness.
it's not the substitute. It's not being eaten by mistake, which is
Right.
basically what that is. And it's a conscious choice, and it's
Yes.
in addition to eating the good stuff that your body needs. So the whole thing is not to feel deprived. I've
Right.
got that theme throughout the immunity code book. I have that theme throughout the 13-week program that I do. It's like absolutely do not feel deprived because the second you do,
You're going to want it more.
you are going to want that thing above all
I know.
else. Your focus is going to go there, and we have a bigger problem than we started with, which
Yes.
is exactly why diets don't work
Yeah.
because they give you a very restrictive eat this, don't eat that, do this, don't do that, and you can do anything for a few weeks, but then you're going to quote unquote fall off the wagon. And of course you are. It was designed that way.
Yeah.
That wasn't a diet for you. It didn't take into consideration what you need. It didn't take into consideration your taste buds, your energy levels, nothing, particularly when you're restricting quantities,
Hmm.
either by calorie or by size. When you're restricting that, you're putting that person in a state of deprivation, and now they're hungry. And
Yeah.
hungry means miserable. Miserable means they're going to want something to cheer them up. That's probably going to be donuts, pastries, etc.,
Right.
right? So you
Bag of
can
chips.
see
Yep.
a bag of chips. You can see that whole process happening. And
Yeah.
at the end of that, the person says to themselves, you know what? I can't do this. I'm never any good at diets. It doesn't work for me. Well, of course it doesn't. It doesn't work for anybody. It's just
Right.
that that's not what you're sold. It's the
Yes.
diet industry, just another branch of the food and pharmaceutical industries, honestly. And I've studied these. I'm certified in these areas. I can tell you,
Hmm.
it's when you put restrictions on another person, you set them up for failure. That's just straight up how that works.
Because nobody wants to be told what we can't do.
Of
Because
course not.
immediately we step into, why can't I do it? But I want to do this. And that's all you'd be obsessive over about,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. If I said you can't have chocolate ever again,
Right?
you'd probably go and buy 3 bars and eat them in the kitchen, right?
Exactly.
Because,
Where it's like, okay, have your chocolate. But before you have your chocolate, do you need it right now? Can you put it off later? One of my friends, same lady, 91, when she was giving up smoking, she put the cigarettes in her drawer and she'll go to the drawer and go, do I really need this right now? No, and close the drawer. And did that so many times that it got to a point, I just don't need to smoke anymore. So when we get to that point, we're kind of retraining the brain, but we're also looking at, do I need it?
and there's
Right.
different ways to approach that, and I love that
Mm-hmm.
that worked for her. Um, but there's different things. Really, you need to
Got to know what
know.
works for you.
You need to know also, why do you
Yeah.
want to not have that thing?
Right.
What is the reason? Is it because it makes you feel rotten? Is it
Mm-hmm.
because you really are very large and for health reasons, you need to be a smaller size, whatever that looks like? Like, what are your reasons? Or is it because other people tell you you shouldn't be eating this?
Yes.
Or, it's that time of year, therefore I should be on a diet. One of the things that I've pointed out recently on a podcast was 1st of January.
Mm-hmm.
Nightmare if you work in a gym. I
Mm-hmm.
have worked in gyms over the years. I had my own at one point, and January 1st is an utter nightmare
Mm-hmm.
because the world and his dog shows up, having made New Year's resolutions,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they come in and they flog themselves to death and they cough their germs all over the place. And within 2 weeks, there's a mass exodus of people who have dropped a lot of money to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And now they shed their New Year's resolutions at the door, and they're no better off than they were, possibly worse off. And one of the things that's happened now is they have reinforced for themselves the lack of self-efficacy. I can't do this.
Right.
And why? Because they came in with no reason for being there at all. The thing is, if you're trying to get away from a pain point, right? Like I've been overindulging this entire sugar season and now I feel terrible. So I'm going to make amends and do all these amazing things, right? So you start and you get away from that pain point a little bit and you start moving and you do all the things. Well, the further you get away from that negative thing, that pain point, the less power it has.
Right.
So you drop off and you end
Mm-hmm.
up back at that pain point and you go again. This is yo-yo dieting, this is exercise, it's all of those things. Now, if you have something positive to move toward,
Yes.
a real goal, like I know somebody who said, well, I want to be able to play with my grandchildren and I want to dance at their weddings.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what somebody with diabetes said. So it's like, okay, cool. You have a very strong reason for what you're doing. What else is there? Let's build it up. Let's build it up and put as much as possible at the what you're moving to
Yeah.
phase, not so much what you're moving away from.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you're moving away from is where you're at right now. Okay, so that's all the information we need. What are you moving to and
Mm-hmm.
why? Does it actually matter to you? Or is it just a ritual that you do, like this
And also,
ridiculous January 1st thing
is
that
it just
never
one thing like
works?
dancing at the wedding, or is it what's beyond the wedding? Right?
Right. And
It's,
and how do you want to feel? Do you want to be able
yeah.
to get up off the floor without a problem?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to be able to run up the stairs? Like, how much do you want to be able to do? And let's look at how we get you there. But it's having something to go to rather than away from. And again, the diet industry goes for let's get you away from that. You
Yeah.
might have a goal weight, but it's a pretty arbitrary number and it doesn't mean much. Like, what
No.
does it mean when you hit that number? And I asked a client the other day who was talking, it was the powerlifting client, was talking about the particular number that she wanted to reach. And I said, well, okay, but how are you going to feel when you get there? What do you think
Mm.
you're going to feel? What do you think is going to be different in your life? How are you going to do things differently? Like, what does that number represent? Let's look at that. And how about you enjoy that now?
Yeah.
There's a concept. Why don't we
Right.
not wait for that number? But actually, like if you want to wear these particular clothes, how about you get some that fit you like that now? You know,
Exactly.
and how about you do these other things, like you go to the parties or you do whatever it
Mm.
is.
And
Yeah,
enjoy yourself. Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
Because you'll get there, you'll get to the number, but the number
Exactly. And
isn't,
enjoy yourself along the way. Don't wait to get
yeah,
enjoyment. Yeah.
the number isn't a magic bullet. You don't wake up one day, get on the scales and say, yes, I've arrived. That's it. My life is perfect.
Right.
And actually have it be true. No, typically depression follows this because
Yes.
you've achieved the thing that you thought was important. You
Now what?
discover it's not that important.
Yeah.
And now you've got this massive letdown. Plus, how are you going to keep that if you had to struggle hard to get there? All these things are so important because if
Very.
you've got the
Yeah.
energy of struggle in there,
Yes.
then it's not right for you.
Right.
And that's with the immune system as well. If you can want
It's
to boost your
investing
immune
in a
system,
new lifestyle by investing in yourself and celebrating yourself along the way, not depriving, not punishing, not struggling. It's just a reconfiguration. I remember when I wanted to lose weight after a third baby to get back into the particular suit I loved. And I finally got back into that suit, put it on. I thought, I hate this. I hate this. A, it was out of date. And B, the person that used to wear that is not the same person I am today.
right.
Right?
And
And
that is a beautiful example of exactly what happens to so many people who, even when they are successful and with this stated goal, which is weight loss, they're actually not successful at all at feeling the way they wanted to feel.
yeah,
So we have to distinguish between, is it a number really, or is it your health? Do you want
yes.
your immune system to carry you through that season so that you're not dragging yourself around and feeling miserable?
Hmm.
What do you want? And here's the thing that's a little outlandish, and some people don't believe me, but I have not yet had COVID. Can
Hmm.
you imagine? I have
Yeah.
not.
I've had
And
it
I
twice this year.
and I very rarely get sick. Now, I don't
Hmm.
have grandchildren that are petri dishes, so
Yes.
full disclaimer there. But I do go out in the world and I do see people. It's just that my immune system is handling it.
Mm.
Will it always be that way? No, of course, nobody can make that statement. But can you give yourself the best odds? Yes. Are vaccines the way? I would dispute this. I'm
Mm.
not a fan. I have had some COVID vaccines and I got very sick. And I wouldn't do it again. So that's my full disclaimer.
That's
What
me
you
with the flu
choose
one.
what you choose is up to you.
Hmm.
It would be nice if we had real information before we got to make those choices.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it would be nice if it was really a choice. I didn't have one because of where I worked.
Mm.
But that's my disclaimer. Am I still getting vaccines? No, I am not.
Mm.
I am taking care of my own immune system. Thank you very much. And following my own advice because that is what I've researched and found to be good. Relying on these external vaccines is some of them, like measles, mumps, rubella, those things have been around forever. Polio, been around forever. They have a good track record. Do I recommend those? I do. I
Hmm.
think that those are diseases that you could avoid.
Yes.
We know they exist and we know that they do bad things to you if you get them. So those, yes, absolutely. But when you look at the more modern conditions, such as the
Hmm.
pandemic we just had, the people that had the worst time are the people who had systemic inflammation, pretty much full stop. They had systemic inflammation, and that meant they were already on the way to problems.
Right.
So if your immune system can improve and your inflammation goes down, you have a running start. It doesn't mean you'll never get sick. It just means that you're in the best condition you can be in to
To
fight
weather it. Yeah.
to
Not
fight
it
that
weather you.
and to learn from it,
Yeah.
right? Because depending on what the thing is that's bothering you, your body does have an adaptive immune system, which means that part of the immune system learns, right? Like, oh yeah, I recognize this bacteria, I've seen it before, and it's
Mm.
ready. And you need some exposure for that to work. And
Yeah.
some vaccines will give you that. It's just the amount of vaccines, the frequency of them,
Yes.
and lately, the lack of research into them before
Mm.
they start sticking them in your body, these things I have problems with.
Right.
It's just anything, right? Like
Well,
a new,
it's like what we were talking about before, the agenda, the agenda, the agenda, and it's been proven over and over again that it's money based, it's money driven, and so we have to look at, is this really going to benefit me, or is it benefiting them? I need to know more whether, they haven't shortcutted along the way.
right.
Uh, and that
And
what I am putting in my body is something that is going to protect me. And we do have the right to ask that. We do have the right to choose. And,
we do. And you can
yeah.
also ask for, like I mentioned earlier on, the 6-in-1 vaccine. Well, surely that can be given it separately.
Yes, exactly.
At least break that down into like 3 parts, at the very least.
Well, I
Do you
mean, my
want six
daughter
in
just
one? I
recent,
don't want 6-in-1.
no, my daughter recently, took her son to have his vaccine, and she wanted it done separately. And they kind of basically bullied her into having it now. And he was sick for nearly 3 weeks. And
Right,
he's already kind of compromised because he has Down syndrome. He's a beautiful, gorgeous little boy, but he has, some challenges already in the sense that his development is slower than everyone
right.
else's, including eating and drinking and, walking and all of those things. He's already got those things against me. He doesn't need anything else. And she really wanted to have it done, spaced out to give him a chance, and wasn't given that chance. And I think that's where it's wrong, is that we need to respect. Again, our health is our choice, and we need to be around professionals that respect that choice. I used to
And
have a wonderful doctor, and I was married to a Chinese guy, and she would say to me, "Look, this is what you have. What Chinese medicine has he got for you that can help before I give you a prescription?"
right.
Right? So broad-minded, excellent. And that it's hard to get a doctor here in BC. There's a million without. When I got sick this last time, it was bronchial asthma, and I knew I needed antibiotics. I know me well enough. I needed a case of antibiotics. This was nothing else was going to do it. And I couldn't get a doctor. I had to, set up a phone a doctor, and three of them canceled on me. It was the fourth doctor I got after a week where I finally got the prescription. Within 3 days, the bronchitis was gone. I know my body. I know when I
Mhm.
need it and when I don't need it. But just to find a medical person now, and more of them are going into private and money and not being, because we have medical, I was covered, but it's all about being paid. And also the restrictions, having interviewed so many doctors that they're being blacklisted for holistically wanting to help their patients because it's all about the agenda, and
Very
them
difficult. The
very
the
different.
medical system is under pressure.
It is. There's
And
another system that has to change. Yeah.
it's
We hope that you enjoyed the show. There are so many more for you here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. Just go to the podcast tag at the top there and you will see all the many genres and all 3,000 shows ready for your listening. We are here to serve you, to help you on your journey of life, and we know that through inspiration it begets invitation. We are supported by you, the listeners, and those that we interview. Anything that you can spare us in donation would be greatly accepted, and we do hope that you enjoy the next show.